16 world championships, 214 professional tournament wins, and records that the sport's own analysts describe as unbreakable. That is the career of Phil Taylor. Growing up in a condemned house with no electricity and no running water, working a factory line making ceramic toilet roll holders for £52 a week, Taylor became the most dominant individual sportsman Britain has ever produced. And this video makes the case for exactly why. Phil Taylor arrived in Burslem, Stoke-on-Trent on the 13th of August 1960, the son of a tile factory worker named Douglas. The family home was so run down that the upstairs had been condemned and boarded shut, leaving the three of them sleeping downstairs together, with no electricity coming into the building and no running water. Scavenging for scrap metal and coal was part of daily life. 16 years old when he left school, Taylor spent years cycling through manual jobs before landing at a Stoke factory where his work involved manufacturing ceramic toilet roll holders at £52 per week. On evenings, he played money games of darts in pubs, and one night he walked away with £500, which he spent on having a shower fitted. That single detail says more about where Taylor's hunger came from than almost anything else. This was not a man drifting into darts for fun. Darts was a way out. The turning point arrived in 1985 when Taylor and his partner Yvonne attended an exhibition match featuring the reigning world champion Eric Bristow, who had recently relocated to North Staffordshire. Taylor apparently told people he could beat him. Yvonne bought Taylor a new set of darts for his 25th birthday, and he started practicing at Bristow's pub on Moorland Road in Burslem, which went by the name the Crafty Cockney. Within 2 years, Taylor was playing county darts for Staffordshire alongside the man he had just been watching perform. Bristow saw something in Taylor that he decided was worth backing financially. The deal was roughly £10,000 to support Taylor's family, but the condition was hard. Taylor had to quit the factory entirely and commit to darts as a profession. Bristow coached him, took him to tournaments, and delivered his feedback with zero sentimentality, famously telling Taylor to call him only when he had won something and then hanging up. Taylor won his first professional title in 1988, taking the Canadian Open by beating reigning world champion Bob Anderson in the final, and he had been playing serious darts for fewer than 3 years at that point. 2 years after that, in January 1990, Taylor walked into the Embassy World Championship carrying odds of 125 to 1. The man standing opposite him in the final was Eric Bristow. Taylor won 6 sets to 1, and the greatest career in the history of the sport had officially begun. 16 world championships. Start there, because the title count is where any honest conversation about Taylor's place in history has to open. The next highest total in PDC history sits at 3, and that gap between 16 and 3 is not a close contest. It is the defining fact of professional darts. 8 of those world championships came consecutively, between 1995 and 2002, a streak no PDC player has come close to replicating, given that nobody else has ever managed more than 3 in a row. 21 world finals across his career, another all-time record, and 14 consecutive PDC World Championship finals from 1994 through 2007, a run that stretched across 13 years of trying and finding the final again and again. Total career titles reached 214 professional wins, with 87 major titles recorded across the PDC and BDO combined. The world match play fell to Taylor 16 times from 17 final appearances. The World Grand Prix, 11 titles from 11 finals, a perfect record in the final of that tournament. The UK Open 5 times, the Premier League 6 times, the Grand Slam of Darts 6 times, 4 consecutive European Championships, including the very first one ever held. PDC world number 1 for 13 years in total, including 8 consecutive years from 2006 to 2013, with his longest uninterrupted spell at the summit stretching 2,033 days. The BBC placed him among the 10 greatest British sportsmen of the previous 35 years in 2015, and the FDI algorithm, the most objective analytical ranking in darts, scores Taylor as the all-time greatest with a peak rating of 2,124, compared to Michael van Gerwen's peak of 2,089. Even the machine puts Taylor first. Some critics note, fairly, that the PDC field in the 1990s was smaller and less competitive than today's game, and that early streak of 8 consecutive world championships came in that environment. That criticism deserves acknowledgement. What it cannot explain is everything that followed, because after that 8-title run, Taylor went on to win 8 more world championships. His 16th and final world title came in January 2013, when he was 52 years old, came back from 4 sets down to 2 in the final against Michael van Gerwen and won 7 sets to 4. In 2009 alone, Taylor won every available PDC major in a single calendar year: the World Championship, the World Match Play, the World Grand Prix, the UK Open, and the Grand Slam of Darts, all 5 in one season. His tournament average across the European Championship that year registered at 111.54, and his lowest individual match average throughout that entire event was 109. At his worst across that tournament, he was averaging 109. Numbers on a title list describe outcomes, but their averages and statistical records describe the mechanism behind them, and those records are where the real argument lives. Taylor's highest recorded free dart average in a major televised match was 118.66, posted against Kevin Painter in the 4th round of the 2010 UK Open, a match he won 9 legs to 0. His highest world championship final average was 110.94, set against Raymond van Barneveld in the 2009 final, and that record still stands in 2026. The highest average ever recorded in a World Match Play final, 111.23 against Adrian Lewis in 2013, belongs to Taylor, and that record still stands. The Grand Slam of Darts final record, 109.04 against Gary Anderson in 2011, also still belongs to Taylor, also still stands. 3 final records across 3 separate major tournaments, all set in matches Taylor won, all unbroken more than a decade after he posted them. The 9 dart finishes tell a similar story. 11 televised perfect legs across his career, which stood as the record at the time of his retirement. On the 24th of May 2010, in the Premier League final against James Wade, Taylor hit 2 9-dart finishes in the same match, the first time that had ever been done in professional darts, and he nearly hit a 3rd before wiring treble 17 on his 8th dart. His first televised 9-darter arrived on the 1st of August 2002 against Chris Mason at the World Match Play, making Taylor the first player to hit a perfect leg on live UK television and earning him £100,000 in bonus money on the spot. At the PDC World Championship across his career, Taylor recorded 110 match averages of 100 or above, another all-time record, and surpassed the 110 mark more than 50 times in televised matches. Michael van Gerwen does hold the outright record for highest televised match average at 123.4, set in 2016, which is higher than Taylor's personal best of 118.66, and that context matters. What also matters is that Van Gerwen's era uses modern staple-free dartboards with thinner wires that effectively increase scoring accuracy, while Taylor's 113.43 against Gary Mawson at the 1997 World Match Play came on older stapled boards with thicker wires. The comparison, in other words, is not as clean as the raw numbers make it appear. Head-to-head records across a long career expose what title counts alone sometimes obscure, and Taylor's head-to-head numbers against virtually every significant rival in the sport amount to one of the most one-sided bodies of evidence in professional darts. Dennis Priestley, who beat Taylor in the very first PDC World Championship final in 1994, went on to face him in 5 world finals across their careers and lost 4 of them, finishing with a head-to-head record of 6 wins and 37 losses against Taylor across all meetings. Priestley's own verdict was direct. "I created the monster that Phil Taylor became." Kevin Painter sits at 1 win and 32 losses against Taylor, a record so lopsided it is almost difficult to process. Peter Manley faced Taylor in 3 World Championship finals and lost all 3, including 2 7-0 defeats, finishing the head-to-head at 3 wins and 22 losses. John Part was the man who ended the 8-year World Championship winning streak in 2003, beating Taylor 7 sets to 6 in that final, and Taylor had beaten Part 7-0 in the previous year's final, when Part had 0 answers. Across all meetings, the head-to-head reads 31 wins for Taylor and 6 for Part. Raymond van Barneveld presented the most sustained challenge of anyone in Taylor's career, with 83 total professional meetings between them, the most of any pairing Taylor had. Van Barneveld arrived in the PDC in February 2006, having won 4 BDO World Championships, crossing over specifically to compete at the highest level, and he put it plainly when he reflected on their rivalry. "At the time, he was my hero. I was a big fan. They say never meet your heroes." Across those 83 meetings, the record landed at 61 wins for Taylor and 18 for Van Barneveld. Gary Anderson compiled 40 wins and 17 losses against Taylor. Adrian Lewis, a fellow Stokey whom Taylor mentored from his teenage years, finished at 17 wins and 55 losses. Michael Van Gerwen, the man most frequently mentioned in the same breath as Taylor when discussing the sport's greatest ever player, accumulated 26 victories against Taylor, the most of any opponent, and still trails 34 wins to 26 in the head-to-head. The 2007 World Championship final between Taylor and Van Barneveld draws the widest consensus as the greatest darts match ever played, and the story of how it unfolded explains why. Taylor opened with 3 consecutive sets, winning the first 8 legs of the match, while Van Barneveld managed exactly 1 dart at a double during that stretch. What changed the trajectory was a Van Barneveld 170 checkout that stopped the bleeding and started the comeback, and from that moment, the match became something different entirely. 4-2 Taylor, 5-3, 5-5, 6-5 Van Barneveld, 6-6. The deciding 13th set went all the way to a sudden death leg, and the ball throw that determined who threw first produced one of the most famous moments in the sport. Van Barneveld landing his dart directly on top of Taylor's single ball to claim the bullseye and earn the throw. He won the leg, took the set, and shouted "Champion of the World" into the arena. 21 combined 180s landed in that match, a World Championship final record at the time. Taylor called it probably the best final I've played in. 2 years later came the response. The same opponent, the same stage, and Taylor averaged 110.94 across 7 sets to Van Barneveld's 1. Still the World Championship final record. The 2013 World Championship final against Van Gerwen carried a different kind of weight. The young man who would eventually take the sport over had built a 4-2 lead in sets against a 52-year-old Taylor, and what followed was Taylor winning 5 consecutive sets to close out at 7-4 and claim his 16th world title. Van Gerwen said afterward that no one would match Taylor's achievements. 2 more matches deserve mention. The 2011 Grand Slam final, where Taylor averaged 109 and defeated Anderson 16 sets to 4. And the 2013 Grand Slam semi-final against Adrian Lewis, which Lewis himself later called the greatest game in darts, a match where the combined average sat around 220, where Taylor hit checkouts of 167 and 160, and where Taylor won 16 legs to 9. The BDO-PDC split gets used occasionally as a way to discount Taylor's early title run, with the argument that his 8 consecutive World Championship wins between 1995 and 2002 came against a smaller, weaker field before the full weight of BDO talent crossed over. The argument sounds reasonable on first hearing, and it collapses almost immediately when you check what actually happened when the 2 sides met directly. In 1999, Taylor played reigning BDO World Champion Raymond Van Barneveld in a head-to-head challenge match at Wembley Arena and won 21 legs to 10. In 1997, BDO World Champion Richie Burnett faced Taylor and lost 4 sets to 1. When Van Barneveld eventually made the full switch to the PDC in 2006 to compete at the highest level, Taylor beat him across 61 of their 83 professional meetings. The supposed peak of BDO excellence crossed over, competed under equal conditions for years, and still finished on the wrong side of the head-to-head. By 2006, the quality debate was effectively settled. That changed when the BBC dropped the BDO World Championship in 2016 after 38 years of broadcasting it and picked up the PDC tournament instead. The BDO then went into liquidation in September 2020, and with it went any remaining basis for the legitimacy argument. Taylor's 16 titles are recognized universally across the sport. The organization that once disputed the PDC's standing no longer exists. Van Gerwen's case deserves a fair hearing, and the numbers behind it are real. A world record highest televised average of 123.4 in 2016. 3 PDC World Championships. A spell of dominance in 2016 where he won 25 titles, including every major available. The FDI algorithm's gap between them is narrow, 2,124 for Taylor against 2,089 for Van Gerwen. peak performance levels, as the PDC's own statistical work has confirmed, are extremely close. None of that changes the title count. 16 world championships against 3, 87 majors against roughly half that, 214 professional wins, 16 world match play titles, 11 world Grand Prix titles, records in 3 separate major finals that still stand, and 2 9-darters in a single match before anyone else had hit one. Michael Smith, the 2023 world champion, put it plainly: no one is going to beat Phil Taylor's record, so he must go down as the greatest of all time. Luke Littler, who produced one of the most staggering debut seasons the sport has seen, stated in February 2026 that he would not consider himself the greatest unless he surpassed what Taylor won. Van Gerwen himself, in a PDC Europe Q&A, said, "The greatest is Phil Taylor, but who is the best ever? That's me." Even in making his own claim, Van Gerwen named Taylor first. Taylor's own position on the hypothetical matchup against Van Gerwen was characteristically unambiguous, telling The Telegraph in 2017, "I would have done him, trust me, I would have done him mentally. I would have smashed anybody if I was their age." The conviction behind those words is vintage Taylor, and across 30 years of professional darts, that conviction had an almost perfect track record of being justified. Retirement came officially on the 27th of January 2017, with Taylor announcing he would play one final PDC World Championship before stepping away. That final World Championship arrived on the 1st of January 2018 at Alexandra Palace, and Taylor reached his 21st World Final after beating Gary Anderson in the semi-final along the way. Extraordinary in itself for a 57-year-old man competing against the best players in the world. The opponent waiting in the final was Rob Cross, a former electrician who had only turned professional in January 2017, making the 2018 World Championship his debut. Cross won 7 sets to 2, averaging 107.67. Late in the match, Taylor found himself in position for what would have been his first 9-dart finish at a World Championship in 25 appearances, and wired double 12. Cross graciously allowed Taylor to hold the trophy with him after the ceremony. Cross reflected on the occasion with a thought that framed the whole occasion perfectly. "I was actually born in 1990. The coincidence that when he won his first ever world title, I took my first breath of air. You will not see another sportsman like him." On the 20th of May 2025, following hip replacement surgery and laser eye surgery, Taylor confirmed his complete withdrawal from all darts, including exhibitions. His words were simple: "I'm officially announcing that I've finished playing darts now." The man who grew up in a condemned house in Burslem, who manufactured toilet roll holders for £52 a week, who learned the game in a pub, finished with an estimated £8 million in career earnings and records across nearly every category in the sport. The question this video opened with was how good Phil Taylor really was, and the answer is documented across 30 years of professional competition. 8 consecutive world championships. No PDC player has managed more than 3 in a row. 16 world match play titles, with 99 wins from 107 matches at that event. 11 televised 9-dart finishes, including 2 in a single match that nobody had managed before him. Final records in the World Championship, the World Match Play, and the Grand Slam of Darts that remain unbroken in 2026. 214 professional titles and 87 majors, figures that dwarf every other player in history. The BBC ranked him among the 10 greatest British sportsmen of the last 35 years. The Sports Objective Analytics rate him the greatest player who ever competed. The current generation of players, including the man chasing the throne right now, define their own targets by his numbers. A condemned house in Burslem, £52 a week, 16 world championships. Phil Taylor was, by every honest measure the sport provides, the greatest darts player who ever lived.